Welcome back to HOA Neighbor Court. I kept every timestamp, and she kept lying. Do not walk away from me. Dawn Fletcher shouted that my doorbell camera was pointed wrong, and that was a violation too. She stood on my driveway in Sacramento with a folder organizer jammed under one arm and a bright orange cone she had just set down like she owned the sidewalk. Her face was red, her jaw tight, and she waved a printed notice in my direction. I stopped halfway to my front door and turned back around. My keyring jangled on the carabiner clipped to my belt. I worked shift lead at a warehouse in Sacramento, and I had just gotten home from a 10-hour day. My name is on the deed at Copper Creek Estates HOA, a neighborhood with a shared mail kiosk and cameras everywhere. Dawn Fletcher is the board secretary, and she has been escalating petty complaints against me for months. This time she was accusing me of stealing from the HOA storage inventory. She claimed I had access and she had proof I was a repeat offender, dragging up unrelated old complaints about my trash cans being out too long and a guest parking violation from last year. What do you want, Dawn? She snapped the folder open and pulled out a gate fob log printout. The paper was covered in tiny rows of timestamps and codes, no readable text, but she held it up like it was a warrant. Your fob was logged at the clubhouse Sunday night. The storage closet was accessed. Monday morning, we found missing inventory. Smart lock batteries, tools, cash from the vendor petty box. You were the last one in. I shook my head. I was not at the clubhouse Sunday night. I was home. Check my doorbell camera if you want proof. Dawn stepped closer, her voice dropping into a low, controlled threat. I can make this official with one phone call. This is not a debate. You hand over your camera footage right now, or I am filing a formal complaint with the management office and you will be fined for non-cooperation. She tapped the notice against her palm. And if you refuse, I am recommending a hearing to suspend your access to all common areas until this is resolved. I felt my chest tighten. I needed to stay calm. My mental health had taken enough hits from HOA drama, and I was not going to let Dawn push me into yelling. Fine, I will send you the footage. But I am telling you right now, I was not there. Dawn smiled, a cold, calculated expression. Then the footage will prove that, will it not? She folded the printout back into her organizer and picked up the cone. I expect it by tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. If I do not have it, I am escalating this to the vendors. I will make sure every contractor we work with knows you are under investigation. She turned and walked back toward the street, leaving the cone on my driveway like a marker. I went inside and pulled up my doorbell camera app. Sunday night, I had been home the entire evening. The footage showed me arriving at 6:45 p.m. and not leaving again. I clipped the relevant timestamps, saved the file, and emailed it to Dawn before 9 p.m. that night. I added a polite note asking her to confirm receipt. She never replied. The next morning, I checked my email. Nothing. I checked the HOA neighborhood chat app. Dawn had posted a new message in the main channel at 7:30 a.m. It was titled Community Safety Alert, and it was pinned to the top. The post claimed there had been multiple reports of someone checking car door handles in the neighborhood, and that residents should be vigilant. It did not name me, but it described my street and mentioned that the board was investigating a potential repeat offender with a history of violations. I felt my face flush. She was escalating the rumor into a public accusation without naming me directly, but everyone on my street would know who she meant. I screenshotted the post and saved it. Then I opened my email and sent a formal records request to the HOA management office. I asked for a copy of the gate fob logs, the storage closet access records, and any complaints filed against me in the last 6 months. I cited the California Civil Code section that requires HOAs to provide records within 10 business days. I got an auto reply confirming receipt. The management office had a walk-in cutoff at 4:30 p.m., and it was already 8:15 a.m. I had work in an hour, and I could not take the day off, but I needed to move fast. At 9 a.m., Dawn emailed me. She did not acknowledge my footage. Instead, she wrote that the board had reviewed my submission and determined it was inconclusive. She claimed the camera angle did not prove I had not left through a side door or a back exit. She also said that my refusal to cooperate fully was being noted in my file. At the bottom of the email, she attached a vendor contact list and wrote that she was forwarding my name to the clubhouse maintenance contractor and the landscaping company as a precautionary measure. I stared at the email. She was moving the goalposts. I had sent exactly what she asked for, and now she was inventing new requirements. I took a screenshot of her original demand and her new response and saved both. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from my neighbor Steve, who lived 2 doors down. He was a former board member who had kept old files after he left the board last year. His message said, "Saw the chat post. That is messed up. Call me when you can." I called him on my lunch break. Steve answered on the second ring. "I have been watching Dawn for a while. She has been pulling this stuff on other people too. Last year, she accused someone of stealing a package from the mail kiosk, and it turned out she had taken it herself by mistake. She never apologized. The board just let it drop. Do you have any records from back then?" Steve paused. "I have some old board emails. I kept them because I thought something like this might happen. I can send you what I have, but I do not know if it will help with your current situation. Send me everything. I need to build a timeline." Steve sent me a zip file with about 40 emails. I spent my evening shift breaks scrolling through them. One email chain from 10 months ago mentioned a discrepancy in the clubhouse petty cash. Dawn had been tasked with reconciling it. The last email in the chain said the issue was resolved, but there was no explanation of what had actually happened. Another email mentioned a vendor invoice for supplies that had never been delivered. Dawn had handled that one too. I made notes. The pattern was starting to show up. Every time something went missing or a vendor issue came up, Dawn was involved in the resolution, and the records always ended with a vague closure and no detail. Thursday morning, I went to the management office during my break. The office was in a small commercial plaza about 10 minutes from the neighborhood. I walked in at 11 a.m. and asked the front desk clerk for my records request. She checked her system and frowned. "I do not see a request under your name." I pulled up the email on my phone and showed her the auto reply. She looked at it and then checked again. "Let me get my manager." The manager came out a few minutes later. She was a woman in her 50s with short gray hair and a no-nonsense expression. She introduced herself as Linda. I pulled the request again. "Let me check the portal." She went back to her office, and I waited. 5 minutes later, she came back out with a printout. "Your request was opened Monday morning, but it was deleted Tuesday afternoon from an admin account." She looked at me. "Do you know who has admin access to the portal?" "The board members have access. Dawn Fletcher is the secretary." Linda nodded slowly. "I am going to reopen this request and flag it. You will have your records by end of business tomorrow." She handed me a receipt with a tracking number. "If you have any issues, call me directly." I thanked her and left. On my way out, I passed Dawn in the parking lot. She was getting out of her car, holding a folder and a handheld radio clipped to her belt like she was dispatch. She saw me and stopped. "What are you doing here?" "Picking up records." Her eyes narrowed. "You do not need to be here. Everything goes through the board." Linda already told me she is handling it. I kept walking. Dawn followed me for a few steps. "You are making this harder on yourself. If you just admit what you did, we can work something out. This is not a debate. I did not do anything. And I am not admitting to something I did not do." She pulled out her radio and pressed the button. It crackled with static. "This is Dawn Fletcher, board secretary. I need a code compliance officer at the management office parking lot immediately. We have a situation." I stopped and turned around. "Are you serious right now?" Dawn kept the radio up. I am documenting your harassment. You are interfering with board business. I am picking up public records. That is not harassment. A security guard walked over from the plaza entrance. He was an older man with a tired expression. What is going on? Dawn pointed at me. This man is harassing me. I need you to escort him off the property. The guard looked at me. Were you harassing her? No. I was picking up HOA records from the management office. She followed me out here. The guard sighed. Ma'am, if he has business in the building, he is allowed to be here. If you feel harassed, you can file a report, but I am not escorting him off the property. Dawn's face turned red. This is unacceptable. I am going to file a formal complaint with your supervisor. The guard shrugged. You do what you need to do. He walked back toward the entrance. Dawn turned back to me. You are going to regret this. She got back in her car and drove off. I went back to work and tried to focus. That evening, I checked the neighborhood chat again. Dawn had posted another message. This one was titled Reminder, Community Standards. She wrote that all residents were expected to cooperate fully with board investigations, and that non-compliance could result in fines, access suspension, and referral to legal counsel. She also mentioned that the board was working closely with local vendors to ensure community safety. If you are enjoying this story, hit that like button and subscribe for more wild HOA drama. Friday afternoon, Linda called me. Your records are ready. I printed everything and flagged the deletion log for you. You should see this. I went back to the office at 4 p.m. Linda handed me a thick envelope and a separate printout. The deletion log shows your request was opened Monday at 8:42 a.m. It was deleted Tuesday at 2:15 p.m. from an admin account registered to Dawn Fletcher. She also pulled the gate fob logs and the storage closet access records before she deleted your request. I opened the envelope. Inside were the gate fob logs, the storage closet access records, a list of complaints filed against me, and a vendor invoice ledger. I flipped through the fob logs first. Sunday night, my fob had not been used at all. But there was another entry at 9:35 p.m., a fob registered to Dawn Fletcher. I looked up at Linda. Her fob was logged at the clubhouse Sunday night. Not mine. Linda nodded. I noticed that too. Keep going. I flipped to the storage closet access records. There were 3 entries for Sunday night. The first was at 9:36 p.m., right after Dawn's fob entry. The second was at 9:52 p.m. The third was at 10:08 p.m. All 3 were logged under the same access code, the master code assigned to the board secretary. Linda leaned over and pointed at the last entry. That is when the closet was locked again. She tapped the page. Now look at the vendor ledger. I opened the ledger. It was a spreadsheet printout with rows of purchases, dates, and vendor names. One entry from 2 weeks ago caught my eye. A bulk order of smart lock batteries and tools from a hardware supplier. The order was placed under Dawn's name, and the delivery address was listed as the clubhouse. But there was a handwritten note in the margin, delivered to alternate address per request. Linda pulled out another sheet. This is the delivery confirmation from the vendor. I called them this morning. They confirmed the delivery was redirected to a residential address. Dawn Fletcher's address. I stared at the paperwork. She stole the supplies. She used her access to take them from the clubhouse, and then she tried to frame me when people started asking questions. Linda nodded. That is what it looks like. I have already forwarded this to the board president. But you should know, Dawn is going to fight this. She has a lot of influence, and she is not going to admit fault easily. I need to get ahead of this. Can I get copies of everything? Linda made copies and handed them to me in a labeled folder. I also printed the portal audit log. If she tries to deny deleting your request, you have proof. I thanked her and left. On my way out, I called Steve and told him what I had found. He whistled. That is huge. But you need to be careful. Dawn is going to try to spin this. She is good at controlling the narrative. I know. I need witnesses. Can you help me? Steve agreed to meet me at the clubhouse the next morning. He said he would bring another former board member, Carol, who had resigned last year after a disagreement with Dawn. Carol had kept her own files, and she had complained about the vendor invoice process being sloppy. Saturday morning, I met Steve and Carol at the clubhouse parking lot. Carol was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She brought a banker's box full of old board documents. Steve brought his laptop with the email archive. We sat at a picnic table outside the clubhouse and went through everything. Carol pulled out a photo she had taken last year during a storage closet inspection. The photo showed a plastic stash bin on a shelf in the restricted storage area. The bin had no label and it was not part of the official inventory. Carol said she had asked Dawn about it, and Dawn had brushed it off, saying it was temporary overflow. I looked at the photo. Did you ever see what was inside? Carol shook her head. Dawn never let anyone touch it. She said it was part of a vendor project, and she would handle it. Steve opened his laptop and pulled up an email from last year. Look at this. Dawn sent an email to the board asking for approval to increase the petty cash limit for the clubhouse. She said it was for emergency repairs. The board approved it. 2 weeks later, there was a discrepancy, and Dawn said it was a bookkeeping error. She reconciled it herself, and no one followed up. I took notes. The pattern was clear. Dawn had been skimming supplies and cash for months. Maybe longer. Every time someone questioned it, she shut it down or blamed someone else. Carol tapped the photo. We need to get into that storage closet. If the bin is still there, it could have the missing items. I checked the time. It was 10 a.m. The clubhouse was open for reservations, but the storage closet required a board member's access code. Steve, do you still have your old code? Steve shook his head. They changed all the codes after I left the board. But Carol might be able to help. Carol pulled out her phone. I have a friend on the current board. She is not a fan of Dawn. Let me call her. Carol stepped away and made the call. She came back 5 minutes later. My friend is sending someone to let us in. But we need to move fast. Dawn checks the access logs every day. A few minutes later, a woman in her 40s arrived. She introduced herself as Melissa, a board member who handled compliance. She looked nervous. I can let you in, but I am not getting involved beyond that. If Dawn finds out, she will come after me. We followed Melissa into the clubhouse. She unlocked the storage closet and stepped back. The closet was small, lined with metal shelves stacked with cleaning supplies, tools, and boxes. I scanned the shelves and spotted the plastic stash bin Carol had photographed. It was still there, shoved behind a stack of paint cans. I pulled it out. The bin was heavy. I set it on the floor and opened the lid. Inside were smart lock batteries, still in the original packaging, a set of tools that matched the missing inventory list, and a cash envelope with about $200 in small bills. There was also a torn mailer with a shipping label. The label had been partially ripped off, but I could still see part of an address, Dawn Fletcher's Street. Carol pulled out her phone and started taking photos. Steve leaned over and looked at the mailer. That is from a package theft. She tore it open and dumped it here. Melissa backed toward the door. I have to go. I did not see this. She left quickly. I looked at Steve and Carol. We need to document everything before Dawn finds out. Carol kept taking photos. Steve pulled out his phone and recorded a video walkthrough of the closet, showing the bin, the items inside, and the torn mailer. I took notes on the exact contents and matched them to the missing inventory list Linda had given me. We were finishing up when I heard footsteps in the hallway. I looked up and saw Dawn walking toward the storage closet. She stopped in the doorway and her face went white. What the hell are you doing in here? I stood up and held the bin lid open. Finding your stash. You want to explain why the missing inventory is in a bin registered to your address. Dawn's expression shifted from shock to fury. She stepped into the closet and pointed at me. You are trespassing. This is a restricted area. I am calling the police right now. Steve stepped forward. I was a board member. I authorized access. This is not trespassing. Dawn ignored him and pulled out her phone. She dialed and put it on speaker. A dispatcher answered. Dawn spoke quickly. This is Dawn Fletcher, board secretary at Copper Creek Estates HOA. I need an officer at the clubhouse immediately. We have a break-in and theft in progress. The dispatcher asked for details. Dawn described the situation, claiming I had forced entry into the storage closet and was attempting to steal HOA property. She did not mention the bin or the missing inventory. I pulled out my phone and opened the camera. I am recording this. You are lying to the police. Dawn's eyes flashed. You are harassing me. This is witness intimidation. Carol stepped between us. Dawn, the bin has the missing items. The mailer has your address on it. You need to stop. Dawn's voice rose. That bin has been there for months. Anyone could have put those items in there. You are trying to frame me because you have always had it out for me, Carol. Steve pulled out his laptop. I have the access logs. You were logged at the clubhouse Sunday night, not him. And I have the vendor invoice showing the delivery was redirected to your address. You stole the supplies and tried to frame him when people started asking questions. Dawn lunged forward and tried to grab Steve's laptop. Carol blocked her, and Dawn stumbled back, her face red and her breathing fast. She pointed at me. You set this up. You planted that bin. You are lying. A sheriff's deputy arrived a few minutes later. He was a tall man in his 30s with a calm expression. He looked at the group and asked what was going on. Dawn immediately launched into her version of the story, claiming I had broken into the storage closet and was trying to steal HOA property. She waved her folder and pulled out a sheet of paper, holding it up like evidence. I have documentation of his violations. He is a repeat offender. The deputy held up one hand. Ma'am, slow down. Let me talk to everyone. I stepped forward and handed him the bin. This is the missing inventory. It was hidden in this closet. The mailer inside has her address on it. I have access logs, vendor invoices, and photos proving she took the items and tried to frame me. The deputy looked at the bin and then at Dawn. Do you have an explanation for this? Dawn's voice shook. I do not know how that got there. Anyone with access could have put it there. This is a setup. The deputy looked at Steve and Carol. Do you have documentation? Steve handed him a flash drive. Everything is on here. Access logs, vendor invoices, the portal audit log showing she deleted his records request, and photos of the bin from a year ago when it first appeared. The deputy took the drive and looked at Dawn. I am going to need you to come with me to answer some questions. This looks like a civil matter with potential criminal elements. We will sort it out at the station. Dawn's face drained of color. I am a board member. This is HOA business. You cannot arrest me for HOA business. The deputy's expression did not change. I am not arresting you. I am asking you to come answer questions. If you refuse, that changes things. Dawn looked around the closet, her eyes darting between me, Steve, and Carol. She opened her mouth, closed it, and then nodded. Fine, I will go. But this is not over. The deputy escorted her out. Before she left, she turned back and looked at me. I can make this official with one phone call. You have no idea what you just started. I watched her leave. Steve put a hand on my shoulder. You did it. You cleared your name. Not yet. We still need to get this to the board and the homeowners. She is going to try to spin this. Carol nodded. We need to move fast. The board meets Monday night. We can present everything then. I spent the rest of the weekend organizing the evidence. I created a tab timeline with copies of the access logs, the vendor invoices, the portal audit log, the photos of the bin, and the delivery confirmation. I included a summary page with a clear narrative. Dawn had stolen supplies and cash over a period of months, used her access to hide the items in the storage closet, and tried to frame me when her actions were questioned. I also included a copy of the neighborhood chat posts and her emails showing her escalation tactics. Monday evening, I arrived at the board meeting with Steve and Carol. The meeting was held in the clubhouse community room. About 20 homeowners were there, more than usual. Word had spread about the confrontation, and people wanted to see what would happen. Dawn was sitting at the board table, calm and composed. She had her folder organizer open in front of her, and her face showed no emotion. The board president, a man in his 50s named Tom, opened the meeting. He looked uncomfortable. We have a situation that needs to be addressed. There have been accusations regarding missing inventory and a conflict between board members and a homeowner. I am going to let everyone speak, and then we will decide how to proceed. Dawn stood up first. She did not wait for Tom to call on her. She launched into a prepared statement, claiming I had harassed her, trespassed in the storage closet, and attempted to steal HOA property. She said I had a history of violations, and that I was retaliating against her for enforcing the rules. She pulled out orange tags from her folder and slapped them on the table. These are the violation notices I have issued. This is documented. This is not a debate. I stood up and walked to the front. I did not say anything. I just handed Tom a copy of my tab timeline. Then I handed copies to every homeowner in the room. Dawn's face shifted from confidence to confusion. What is that? I turned to the room. This is the evidence. Access log showing Dawn was at the clubhouse Sunday night, not me. Vendor invoices showing she redirected a supply order to her home address. Photos of the stash bin in the storage closet with the missing items inside. A portal audit log showing she deleted my records request, and a delivery confirmation from the vendor proving the supplies never went to the clubhouse. Tom flipped through the timeline. His face went pale. He looked at Dawn. Dawn, do you have a response to this? Dawn stood up, her hands shaking. This is fabricated. He doctored those logs. He planted that bin. Carol stood up from the audience. I photographed that bin a year ago. It has been there the entire time. I asked you about it, and you said it was temporary overflow. You lied. Steve stood up next. I have board emails from last year showing a pattern of missing cash and supplies. Every time someone asked questions, you shut it down. You have been stealing from the HOA and framing people to cover your tracks. A community volunteer in the audience, a woman named Janet, raised her hand. Tom nodded at her. I helped with the clubhouse cash box process last year. It was sloppy. Dawn was the only one with access to the full ledger, and she never let anyone audit it. I complained to the board and nothing happened. Dawn's voice rose. You are all conspiring against me. This is a witch hunt. Tom held up the timeline. Dawn, the evidence is here. The vendor confirmed the delivery was redirected. The access logs show you were at the clubhouse. The audit log shows you deleted his records request. He looked at the other board members. We need to vote on immediate suspension pending investigation. Dawn slammed her folder on the table. You cannot do this. I am the board secretary. I have authority. Tom's voice was firm. Not anymore. I am calling for a vote. The vote was unanimous. Dawn was suspended from the board immediately. Tom stood up and addressed the room. We will be conducting a full audit of the HOA finances and inventory. We will also be terminating the vendor contract Dawn abused and opening a formal investigation. If anyone has additional information, please come forward. Dawn grabbed her folder and her orange tags and stormed out of the room. She stopped at the door and turned back. You have no idea what you just did. I can make this official with one phone call. Tom looked at her. That line does not work anymore, Dawn. Leave. Dawn left. The room was silent for a moment. Then one of the homeowners started clapping. Others joined in. I stood at the front, feeling the weight lift off my chest. Steve and Carol walked up and Carol hugged me. You did it. The next morning, I got a call from the sheriff's office. The deputy I had spoken to at the storage closet called to tell me they had opened a formal investigation into the theft. He said the vendor had provided additional documentation and that Dawn had been interviewed. He could not share details, but he said the case was moving forward. He also said I should keep copies of everything and be prepared to provide a statement if needed. I called Linda at the management office and thanked her for her help. She told me the HOA board had already started the audit and that they had found additional discrepancies in the clubhouse accounts. She said the board was also reviewing Dawn's past enforcement actions to see if there were other cases of selective targeting. Over the next few weeks, the story spread through the neighborhood. Homeowners started coming forward with their own stories of Dawn's behavior. One neighbor said Dawn had accused them of stealing a package, and then it turned out Dawn had taken it by mistake. Another said Dawn had tried to fine them for a violation that did not exist in the bylaws. A third said Dawn had blocked their records request and threatened them with legal action when they complained. The board hired an independent auditor to review the finances. The auditor found that Dawn had been skimming petty cash and redirecting vendor orders for over a year. The total loss was estimated at several $1,000s. The board filed a formal complaint with the district attorney and recommended civil action to recover the funds. Dawn resigned from the board before she could be formally removed. She sent a one-sentence email to the board president, "I am resigning effective immediately." She did not apologize. She did not explain. She just disappeared. The HOA terminated the vendor contract Karen abused and switched to a new supplier with stricter inventory controls. The board also implemented new policies requiring dual authorization for all purchases over $100 and monthly audits of the petty cash system. Tom sent a community-wide email summarizing the investigation and thanking homeowners for their patience. He also apologized for the board's failure to catch the issue earlier. I kept my copies of the evidence in a binder on my shelf. I did not need to look at it anymore, but I wanted to have it in case Dawn tried to come back. She never did. A few months later, I saw Dawn at the grocery store. She was in the checkout line ahead of me. She saw me and her face went tight. She did not say anything. She just grabbed her bags and left. I did not follow her. I did not need to. A vendor invoice trail that proves who ordered and received the missing supplies had destroyed her credibility. Karen is caught with a stash box and cannot talk her way out. The HOA terminates the vendor contract Karen abused. Karen demands proof and then panics when I hand out copies. I went home and sat on my porch. The neighborhood was quiet. The mail kiosk cameras were still running. The gate logs were still tracking every entry. But the difference was, I was not under suspicion anymore. I was not fighting false accusations. I was not spending my nights building evidence binders. I was just living in my house, in my neighborhood, without someone weaponizing the rules against me. That was the win. Not the confrontation, not the board meeting, not even the resignation. The win was the absence of the fight. The win was peace. I appreciate you being part of this.